Warning, censorship. Warning, censorship.
I guess it's more gender neutral, right?
Because it's so easy for anybody to have a baby now.
Anybody can have a baby?
Seems like it, yeah.
Why do you think they did that?
Wait, what? I need you to ask me that question again, because
It's a lot to process.
it is a lot to process.
Why do you think they did that?
I'm a mother.
Well, I'll tell you what, we thought last night was going to be calm. It absolutely was not. Tonight, we were thinking it would die down a bit. Tensions would maybe drop. They have absolutely not. Right now, this crowd is probably the same size, if not bigger, as last night.
Both of you believe that white privilege exists. What is it?
I didn't think it was like that real until recently, and I was like thinking about like the opportunities I've had growing up and stuff like that. And being a woman, everyone's like, oh, like you don't have as many rights and stuff, like you don't have as much equal opportunity. I haven't found that to be true, but I do know, or I at least feel that as a white person, I have like a little bit more opportunity than someone who's not.
James Klüg is a political commentator, journalist, and contributor for Newsmax. He's been labeled as a pipeline to conservative news for his on-the-ground coverage of BLM and Antifa riots. Welcome back to Andrew Says. Today's episode is brought to you by Elevate Farms. Elevate Farms is a technology and IP-based indoor farm that produces traditional, farm-grown equivalent products at wholesale market price with a global footprint. Go to elevate.farm for more information. James, thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on, man. Appreciate it. I'm doing very well. Having a good week so far. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Two guests in a row asked me how I'm doing, and it's the first two ever. I'm very happy about that. Now, I want to jump right into your content so anyone who's not familiar with you gets a feel of the type of stuff you produce. You recently did a video asking people about the Biden administration changing their terminology from mother to birthing people. Let's go ahead and play that hilarious/ridiculous clip.
I guess it's more gender neutral, right?
Because it's so easy for anybody to have a baby now.
Anybody can have a baby?
Seems like it, yeah.
Why do you think they did that?
Wait, what? I need you to ask me that question again, because
It's a lot to process.
it is a lot to process.
Why do you think they did that?
I'm a mother.
Mothers to birthing people?
No, that makes no sense to me. I don't know why they would do something like that.
I mean, everybody's offended by everything now, so it just makes sense that they're offended by the word
That,
mother.
of course, is from your Instagram. James, what is the goal of a push like this for this type of language? From the administration, I mean.
Well, I want to add one thing. It's one of those topics that even Biden supporters, keep in mind, a lot of Biden supporters, they voted for Biden because they did not like Trump, right? So they're figuring all this far left-wing stuff out, and a lot of people are totally rejecting it. Of course, you do still get people that are absolutely on board for it, but this is a pretty interesting conversation, and I think there's a lot of speculation around this, but I think a lot of it has to do with kind of destabilizing culture in America. Basically, if there's something good or something that, or more so, something that the left in our country absolutely despises, such as, let's say, traditional gender roles. Now, not saying that every single woman has to be the most female woman and every single man has to be the most masculine man. Not everybody has this great facial hair as you and I. But they really go the opposite direction, right? They go the exact opposite direction of, okay, let's just obliterate gender altogether. And that's what we're seeing with the Biden administration. They're trying to replace mothers with birthing people, pretty much dwindling down motherhood. I mean, this is what it is. It's dwindling down motherhood to the physical act of giving birth, basically treating them like they're cattle in a farm. It's pretty disgusting. And mothers that are watching this, and just mothers all across the world, motherhood is a full-time job. It's a lifetime job, full-time, 100%. And it's a lot more than just the physical act of giving birth. It's nurturing, it's raising, it's all of this beautiful stuff that comes with motherhood. And it kind of just falls in that pattern of basically going the exact opposite direction of traditional American culture, American values, everything like this. That's just one aspect of the conversation. And there's a lot more points to this. It's basically getting rid of genders where, you know, they pretty much just want absolutely nothing to do with a mother, father, boy, girl, anything like that in this country. And this is really what they're pushing for. They're going to keep pushing, and they're going to keep normalizing this stuff, keep pushing it in schools, which they already are. I know in Canada, I believe they're pushing for that stuff as well. And yeah, I mean, there's just no end in sight. And a lot of people see this, you know, a lot of folks that voted for Biden that see this, and maybe they're not the furthest left person. Maybe they just didn't like Trump that much. And a lot of people are completely rejecting it. However, it's a really aggressive push from the left. I mean, it's incredibly aggressive, and they push it in every aspect of our lives. You turn on Netflix, and they're trying to be politically correct, everything like that. So it's in media, entertainment, it's in government, schooling, everything.
Well, in Canada, rejecting your child's gender identity will get them taken away from you, and in even one case ended up in British Columbia as a man going to jail. I wanted to ask you, what is the other side? What about the people who say this is just for inclusion, we're just trying to be nice to people? How do you differentiate between, you know, a power move versus let's just be nice and friendly to people?
Well, I mean, even the inclusion aspect of it, it's just a terrible argument. You're including how many few people, and excluding the rest. One of the questions that I asked in that video was, hey, do you feel included by this? Asking mothers around. I mean, I'm in Los Angeles, by the way, like when I was filming that video. It's not very conservative. It's pretty left-leaning, and you ask mothers, hey, do you feel included by this? Absolutely no, they do not. And they almost treat it like a joke, but it's not a joke. It's completely serious. So I think it's another example of, oh, well, we want to be inclusive. We want, you know, we're caring about these people's rights and all this stuff. But really, you're excluding the 99% majority of individuals out there. It's kind of similar to recently we had a transgender woman go into a spa in Los Angeles. And he still had his male genitalia, exposed himself in front of women in the women's only section of the spa, as well as underage girls. And the argument from the left in this country is, oh, well, that person has a right to do that. Well, you know, this person doesn't, if this person's rights stampede on the 99%, then that doesn't make that much sense. I mean, of course, we want to treat people with love and compassion and stuff like that. I mean, you know, people want to be equal, but that's not equality there.
So why such a hard attempt and push to garner support from a population that's 5% is generous, well under that? Why such a push to accept Caitlyn Jenner into the Republican Party? Why such a push to, you know, change language? What is the goal, as you said just before, to try to dismantle what the social fabric is? Or is there some other reason that you think it is?
I think there's multiple reasons, but I think that's the number one reason. I think dismantling social fabric of the United States, I think is the number one goal. Getting rid of what it means to be American, Judeo-Christian values, anything like that. These people basically run the exact opposite direction. They're going far left. I mean, this is not just, oh, well, meet in the middle a little bit. No, this is the exact 180, complete opposite. I think that's the biggest goal, in my personal opinion. I know there's other points that people have made as well, but from my personal opinion, I definitely think that's the end goal, is basically obliterate gender roles, obliterate all these things. And gender roles are important, and it's important to celebrate what being a man is in a household, or being a woman is in a household. These people want nothing to do with that. They want an absolute, just I don't even know, a billion genders. They want no man or female, or man or woman. They don't want any of that stuff, and it's completely ignoring science, right? I mean,
it seems like a Russian disinformation campaign, frankly. People
for sure.
Into Russiagate. It seems exactly what I forget the former Soviet strategist would have wanted. Now, before we get to our next segment, everyone, which is James getting beaten by people at an Antifa riot, I want to mention that Canada Day is over, but we're still celebrating it. And this new shirt I'm wearing, which is great, it's from a great Canadian brand called Toonie Tours. And everyone loves Canada, so share your true patriot love with the world with 15.4% off all merchandise at shop.toonietours.ca. Go there today. They have these hats on screen. If I'm getting my opposite, of course. They have their hats right here. They're very nice. They even have some flannel plaid, which I'm going to be wearing in the future because I love it. James, you know every Canadian wears plaid, so I implore you, if you want to come cover something in Canada, you'll fit right in if you wear like a lumberjack, I think Notorious B.I.G. would refer to it as. but I recently saw you as a guest on Slightly Offensive. You were recapping some of the Antifa violence, which of course you've had no short of experience with. I want to take a look at this seemingly random attack that you faced, and we'll get you to recap it for us.
This guy right here, religious demonstrators getting shoved to the ground, literally the snot kicked out of them. It was insane. And right when I got there, a guy flanked me from my right, charged me with a police baton, smacked me, and we didn't get the full footage. I checked with this guy, and he didn't get the full footage. He accidentally stopped recording, but right after that, he swings at me a couple times. We were kind of dancing around in the street because I was trying to avoid him. I was just like, yo, what are you doing? This was maybe 10 minutes after I got there. No joke. I was just stopping by for the day. I wasn't even trying to go deep in there. I was just stopping by to get footage.
Now, explain that a bit more. Why was Antifa there? Why were they attacking street preachers? I saw another clip of a guy with, I think, prayer beads fending off people
for sure
on the same day. Tell everybody what happened there.
Okay, so this day, there's so many moving parts to this day, but I'll just break it down for you. And this happened on July 3rd, right before July 4th. Nothing says, I mentioned this in Elijah's podcast, nothing says, happy birthday, America, like a small civil war in the streets of Los Angeles. At 9:40 or so a.m., they actually, a conservative group gathered. And what they were gathering for was actually what I was just talking about, which is the gender female that ended up going into the women's only section of that spa. So what they were doing is this conservative group, maybe 30 people, gathered to protest and stand up for the women that felt uncomfortable in that situation. Naturally, Antifa, SoCal Antifa, as well as other Antifa pages, posted this all over the place because they wanted to confront these conservative demonstrators. So as early as 9:45 a.m., the organizer of the conservative group ended up, he was taking out his signs, everything like that. Antifa walked up and they were ripping up his signs. He threatened them with pepper spray, and I think they jumped him. They had about 6 people on him, just kicking the snot out of him in the street. So things just slowly started escalating from there, of course, because that's what happens when fights break out in the middle of the street. Keep in mind, Los Angeles police, you would imagine, okay, yeah, police would be breaking the thing up. When I showed up, it was I think police were about 3 blocks away just monitoring the situation. So people are getting beaten in the streets. All this stuff is happening. There's a group of maybe 150 plus left-wingers, maybe about 30 more. It's more of a religious group in the morning, it seemed like. And when I showed up, I witnessed them all being chased out. So that footage was mine where I'm showing that guy being chased out. He's wearing like a Jesus Saves shirt, stuff like that. And really what that turned into was a giant battle in the street. After all, the conservatives pretty much just got totally jumped and destroyed. A more aggressive right-wing group showed up, and they just started battling each other in the street. So not 10 minutes in, I show up, and I'm getting footage of people. I was actually just stopping by. I was filming another video in Los Angeles that day. I stopped by just because I heard about it. Like I mentioned in that clip that you played, a guy flanked me from my right, starts swinging this wooden baton at me, ends up smacking me as hard as he can in the back, which, it doesn't feel the best, but that's just what happens when you show up to these scenes. And they ended up kind of just battling in the street, actually outside of where I parked. So I stayed there for an hour or so, and that was pretty big news in California, certainly, but nationwide, actually, just because there's this, like I mentioned, this mini civil war happening in the middle of Los Angeles. Police are standing by, people are beating the crap out of each other in the street, and it was just chaos. And I know I'm ranting, but I want to mention one thing. A big focus here is a conservative group gathered in the morning, right, to hold their signs, all of this stuff. Antifa has really acted in places where police have kind of a stand-down policy as the arbiters of truth, the arbiters of what can be said at these demonstrations. And if you say something that they dislike, they're going to show up and they're going to beat the living snot out of you. And that's why not a lot of families show up to these places. Not a lot of standard conservative right-wing people really show up to these places because they kind of know what they're getting into by now.
Yeah, I think we can show that picture, producer Justin, of the mark left on your back because we didn't catch it in the video. It looked like he was carrying like a British police officer's billy club from the 1940s or something. He should have been twirling it around whistling at the time, but that's no joke getting hit across the back like that. Much less hairy back than mine, so kudos to you on that.
Thank you.
You've covered the riots and these attacks, of course, is what you're mainly known for. I want to ask you, have Antifa's tactics changed at all through the progression of all this? We're like probably 5 years into it now, maybe 6. Has their tactics changed? Have they advanced? Has the rhetoric changed or become more extreme? Tell me about the progression of the progressives.
Has the rhetoric changed? I mean, I think it's been pretty aggressive for quite some time. They've certainly become, and this is, I don't know if it's shocking, but it's more sad. The rhetoric's become more mainstream. It's been repeated by people, the elected officials in the United States. And that rhetoric is, down with like dismantling capitalism, dismantling individual rights, because they see them as a facade of, hierarchies of power. A lot of these people are, I don't know if they're like sick or something, but they're straight up anarcho-communists for a lot of them. I've seen many of them are homeless, not all, of course, but many of them are homeless. I've seen people that I recognize in like camps that show up to these demonstrations. They've certainly gotten smarter, though. I want to mention that they've gotten smarter when it comes to spotting out the quote bad guys, and really what the bad guys for them are the reporters that are willing to show it all. Right, the reporters that are willing to show them beating people in the streets, vandalizing property, everything like that. And most of those reporters, such as myself, let's say Proud Boys are out or doing something like that. We film those groups as well. They just so happen to do a lot less than Antifa does. I mean, last year in 2020, you hear about this all the time, but the entire summer of BLM and Antifa riots happening in the streets, this stuff was chaos. And the reason why people like me go out filming, and people like Jorge Ventura or maybe Kalen from Scriber News, the reason why people like us go out there and film this stuff is because everybody started noticing that the left-wing media, the mainstream media, everything like that, wasn't properly covering it, right? They would be saying, CNN's famous for saying fiery but mostly peaceful in Kenosha, I believe it was, with a massive, parking lot on fire behind that person when they're reporting. It's a complete joke. And so we go out there and we actually show everything. We show everything that's going on. It's hard to show every bit, just because your life is at risk because they're spotting you out. They have we call them fake Antifa press. They usually wear like tape with just press written on them. Those individuals harass cops. They dox reporters. They've doxed me before. And they do their best to basically be active on Twitter to spot out people like me that are filming people committing crimes. Because guess what? People don't like being filmed committing crimes, but somebody's got to do it, unfortunately.
Now, according to Joe Biden, it's just an idea. Of course, everybody knows that's false. And they do a lot of organizing on Twitter, on Facebook groups, and I'm sure probably on more clandestine channels as well. That much is obvious. Is it obvious on the ground that they have some sort of funding or training, somebody telling them what to do in some regard? I know Oakland Antifa had training from I think it was the Denmark chapter, who was working with actual terrorist organizations out of the Middle East. Is it obvious for at least some of these groups that they're receiving some sort of funding or overarching organization?
I mean, I think that they raise money from left-wing groups in the United States. I haven't seen any substantial evidence of that, but one thing I can say for sure is their tactics are very similar all across the United States. I can go to Los Angeles, I can go to Portland, I can go to New York or DC, and they will use the same tactics that they always use. One example, I mean, these are small things, but one example that just comes to mind right away is their use of umbrellas, right? The umbrella use, they'll have someone with a bat smashing in windows as they're marching. Everyone surrounds that person with an umbrella, so no reporters or anything can show them. And every bit of what they do is to protect their own, group. They all wear masks. They all do the right things when it comes to being able to get away with vandalizing property, beating people senselessly in the street, stuff like that. So they are pretty well organized. Back to your point about Biden saying it's an idea, I want to punch on that because that is another point of why a lot of people started actually showing up and reporting on these, because people say, oh, well, Antifa is just an idea, while I'm here inconveniently for them filming these people waving Antifa flags. They have Antifa patches, all of this stuff. It's like, okay, they're an idea, but they seem pretty well organized. I mean, a couple posts on Twitter and they're getting hundreds of people to show up to vandalize and destroy property. I'm not really sure if that's so much of an idea as much of a group. Now, they don't have like passes or anything, but they're very, very well organized and they're very strategic with what they do.
And way ahead of the curve on masks and safety in that regard.
Yeah.
So you're in these BLM and Antifa heavy areas with the riots and the vandalism that's going on. You've been getting attention for this news coverage. News outlets are using your footage. And I want to point out how or maybe yours, I won't put words in your mouth, how an ideological counterpart might see it. And I want to pull up, Justin, an article from The Intercept. It's a couple months old now. I've covered it before, but now that I have you here, here's the quote. And I want to read it in the most evil voice possible because that's what they're painting it as. Newsmax contributor James Klüg gave viewers of his video blog a behind-the-scenes look at how viral video to Fox News pipeline works. Now, they talk about you, Julio Rosas, Jorge Ventura, white supremacists, obviously, Elijah Schaffer, and they talk about you in a way you're creating propaganda by simply filming their actions that they are going through. And I think it's a very weak argument. I think it's just a way for them to publicly get people to know who you are and target you. And I want to show the example that they link to in that very article. And this is what they give as the example for the video to Fox pipeline. And it's from one of your videos, I think. So let's take a look.
All right, you guys, we're back at the Portland Democratic HQ. We have Julio Rosas and George Ventura over here. Julio's hopping on Laura Ingraham right now to talk about what happened earlier today. So you guys, this is pretty much just a behind the scenes of how this all goes down. You get the footage, companies or channels reach out to you, you hop on and you talk about it. Now, Julio is with Town Hall Media, George is with Daily Caller, but all sorts of news organizations will reach out for comments, to have them on their show. So right now they're hopping on Fox News.
One thing is for sure that the Antifa groups here, they do not like Biden.
So this is literally you saying that outlets pick up your footage. And I wrote down, they could just watch the movie Nightcrawler with Jake Gyllenhaal and pick up the same information. You go out, you get footage, and whoever wants it picks it up. I don't know what the rest of the process of payment-wise is. That's what happens in the movie is all I'm saying. But would you even care which outlet picks up your footage so long as they're using it in an honest manner?
No, it's so funny, too. They missed the mark. And by the way, that video, I'm a content creator first and foremost, right? I've been doing YouTube for a little while now, but I also do reporting now. Jorge and Jorge, who was there?
Julio Rosas and Elijah Schaffer.
Yeah, Jorge and Julio that were there in that clip right there. We were in Portland reporting, and I was doing a vlog, and I call it on my channel a vlog because that's fun. But in that video, I'm basically showing kind of the process. I'm giving people behind the scenes of what it's like for reporters going out into riots. So that was maybe later in the day after Antifa attacked the DNC headquarters in Portland, Oregon. And pretty much every single person, George, myself, Julio, every single person took to social media to expose this stuff, right? We took to social media because it didn't matter about getting paid or anything like that. And, these companies like Fox News, they don't just like throw, hey, $300, come on. That's not how it works. But we would post on social media first and foremost just to get the truth out there, because all that you have at these Antifa riots is Antifa-friendly press. We call them fake Antifa press because they harass cops, they attack people. Like I mentioned, they dox reporters. They do all of this stuff, and they protect Antifa. So we show up, we post it to social media, and it gets recognition there. Now, of course, our team now, we're a little bit more connected with who wants the footage and everything like that. So if people want to have the footage or talk about it on their show, for me personally, I go on Newsmax and I talk about what I see, everything like that, because I work with Newsmax. That's how it is. And it's usually the same group of companies because they oftentimes, or pretty much every time, for Newsmax's case, they just tell it like it is. If there's right wingers that show up somewhere, they're going to report on it. There's left wingers that show up somewhere, they're going to report on it. CNN, all of these other companies, they want nothing to do with talking about Antifa. They want absolutely nothing to do with it. That's why they never invite us on. So yeah, sure, you get the same. One American News, Newsmax, Fox News. They invite people like this on because they talk about it all.
You heard him, Joy Reid. You want that footage, you can have it. Now, maybe I'm too close to this, and I'm too cynical. Is there another reason why they might just be writing an article to name 4 people that happen to videotape their crimes, or is it just as obvious as it may seem? What do you think? This person writes this article, names you guys all, and is like, this is how the propaganda flows, you guys.
It's literally all. It's exactly what you think it is. It's a targeted hit on people that are working to get this footage out there. They barely mentioned me, which I don't know. I think that's probably a good thing. But they did mention that that vlog that I did. But they mentioned everyone else, right? And when someone's exposing your garbage, they have to protect their garbage, I guess. It's kind of the weirdest hill to fall on, you know what I mean? It's literally the weirdest hill to die on, but they choose to do it, and they get our names out there. So, now this is going through every single Antifa group, every single BLM group, to where if I'm not covered up or something like that at one of these rallies, I'm getting jumped by 6 people or so. I mean, Kalen from Scriber News, he got jumped maybe about a month and a half ago in a BLM rally, and they just saw him. They said, "Oh, you're not on our side." He wasn't even talking to anybody, and they beat the crap out of him. That's what happens here, and that's kind of what I mean. Them releasing that information, not kind of. That's absolutely the goal, is to expose us so that these people aren't going to walk up to us and say, "Hey, I don't like you. Get out of here." No, they're gonna go like circle you. They're gonna say you're a propagandist, racist, whatever lies they have, and they all rally themselves up, rile themselves up, and surround you and attack you. That's why most of us have been attacked by people, and hit pieces like that article absolutely do not help us. And we don't even talk to people when we're there. We don't talk to officers. We don't talk to anybody. We just show up. We film what we film, and it's not my fault that you're bashing in windows at a local Wendy's. I mean, that's not my fault. You know what I mean? So yeah, that article, it's defending the people that have been terrorizing communities for the last year and a half and going after the people exposing it. That's really what it is.
Yeah, I think if you have any sort of news acumen, you can pretty much see through what's going on there. And it may be knowledge that someone put, like you or I, or whatever the reverse of myself would be, possesses. But I'm not about to go out and write an article about cameramen from MSNBC and BuzzFeed and now this, and how they look for right-wing agitators to shove propaganda onto Joy Reid again. I can't stand her. That's the show I'm picking on. But my point is that I don't think there's any other reason why you would write an article about that. I've never written an article about cameramen before, or about people, these are the group of reporters that report on, oil pipelines or something. I don't see how there can be any other point to it.
Well, they must feel like it makes them look bad, right? It makes their side look bad because tribalism, right? Instead of just condemning bad behavior, which is so easy to do, you see someone being an idiot, left or right, it's not that hard to condemn crappy behavior. And instead of doing that, they go after the people that are actually exposing it. So, it's the biggest joke. Like when we saw that article released, that was pretty unbelievable. You have people that are sitting at home on their couch watching the riots all year through their lens, and people showing the attacks actually on the street, risking their lives and going after them instead. It's the biggest joke ever. And everyone in this group, pretty much everyone in this group. I mean, I can't name one person that hasn't filmed like Proud Boys doing something. Right? We've all been around all these groups. We've filmed all sorts of things. I've filmed Proud Boys and Antifa duking it out in the streets. We don't hesitate to post that stuff. We post it all. And even in that article, they did a big video about the, quote, riot squad, and then they did a big article on it. They didn't mention anything like that. They don't mention any of that stuff. They only mention what was convenient for them. So if there was maybe I would see maybe a screw up in that article. If someone messed up or whatever. God forbid you missed saying something while you're in the middle of a riot, while riot canisters are going off, tear gas is going off. officers are pushing back on you, and you're sitting there shaking on Twitter trying to update the world of what's going on there. God forbid there's a mistake. I mean, it's just unbelievable. People sitting on their couch at home judging people that are actually going into the thick of it to get the best footage that they can get to paint a picture for what it's looking like at these demonstrations. Last year, so many of them turned into absolute chaos, to where if there was just a standard BLM protest in a suburb that remained peaceful, right? Bunch of maybe college kids, stuff like that, people would be boarding up their businesses around the area. Why? It's not propaganda on why. It's because they would see around 10% of these go totally haywire and they destroy the neighborhood. It's insane.
Yeah, it happened here too. When there was a BLM march in downtown Toronto, the majority of the businesses pre-boarded their businesses up, and this is in the financial district on the biggest street in Toronto. These businesses are closing early and boarding their businesses up, and it's not because, you know, of this right-wing fantasy that these things may or may not get violent. It didn't get violent, frankly, but they wouldn't believe that if none of them turned out to be violent. I think you answered my next question, which is that you are more noticeable and recognizable by these groups and all the other people. So I think that we can go past that and just say that it is pretty obvious that they're trying to make you guys out to be targets and support their own ideological teammates. But before we move on, our sponsors are the one making this portion of the episode for free. So please go to elevate.farm, check out what they're doing there. Go to shop.tooneytours.ca if you want this super comfortable polo that I'm wearing. I really love it. I asked them specifically for this. And if you want to watch this episode without ads and all of our Rebel News Plus content, go to rebelnewsplus.com. Just $8 a month, you guys. That's it. Do the thing, as Joe Biden would say. Come on, man. And speaking of Biden, James, his admin, and this isn't funny, is making some scary moves on the eve of Trump's social media lawsuit, ironically enough. I guess they're thinking, let's bypass all that social media stuff altogether. Let's get right into people's phones before they can open up Twitter. Justin, can you please pull up the article from Politico that we have? And I want to read an excerpt from this. I think I saw you talking about this also. Biden allied groups, including the DNC National Committee, are also planning to engage fact checkers more aggressively and work with SMS carriers, which is your text messaging, to dispel misinformation about vaccines that's sent over social media and text messages. The goal is to ensure that people who may have difficulty getting a vaccination because of issues like transportation see those barriers lessened or removed entirely, end quote. So they're saying that because people might be hearing misinformation, that's making them hesitant to go get a vaccination, and that's a reason why we should be, you know, censoring text messages. Am I understanding this correctly, James?
Okay, so basically what we're seeing here, we're seeing a time in American history where the government's realizing, and the Democratic Party is realizing, they've gone so far left, they're realizing that they can't become this sort of totalitarian regime that they want to be, that they're going to start pressuring private companies, SMS companies, to police your text messages. And also, who's the arbiter of truth here? Is it a Democrat's opinion that something doesn't work? Because we've seen a lot of times, or many times, last year, that things ended up being semi-true or true itself, and they were being censored by big tech. So we're seeing the government putting pressure on private businesses to basically do their bidding. They want to censor, they want to police text messages, and that should be the creepiest thing people have ever heard in their lives. I mean, what other country does that? China. I mean, totalitarian regimes promote stuff like this, and that's the creepiest thing. Now, Politico mentioned that DNC was supporting this. I was looking into the article. I didn't quite see a quote from anybody, but let's just take Politico's word, for this. That should worry every single American and every single freedom-loving American. And unfortunately, a lot of people ask, hey, why are Democrats supporting stuff like this? I mean, this seems a little bit anti-freedom, all of this stuff. And I think it's really coming down to one thing. And I'm like kind of, center right. I'm more moderate right. I'm definitely conservative. However, I'm not super hardcore. But you look at this stuff and you're just like, the only way that you could support stuff like this in this country, the only way that you could support stuff like this the policing text messages, if you just truly hate what America is, I mean, it almost seems like the only part of this country, the only part of the United States that the left likes nowadays is the geographical location, because they don't like anything else. They don't like guns. They don't like freedom of speech. They don't like, any of our individual liberties that were granted or were given, and it seems as though anything reasonable they're just opposing now. This is the creepiest thing I've ever seen. I haven't seen any more information on it, but if this is correct, policing SMS text messages, everything like that for fake news or news that they believe is fake, whoever's sitting behind the desk saying, I don't like that, that's the creepiest thing that the government could ever get involved in.
Yeah, and I didn't think it would get to this point. I mean, do you think providers are going to welcome this? How do you think it plays out? Because it already happens with your Twitter messages, Facebook messages. I'm going to throw out a conspiracy theory with this pen and say that's what Grammarly is, reading your emails. Do you think that, Verizon, Sprint, all these companies, do you think they toe the party line on this moving forward?
Yeah, it's a difficult question because I don't know if as many companies are left-leaning from the very top as much as they are just opportunists when it comes to who's going to put the most pressure on them and who's going to give them the most backlash. Okay, that's not the right in the United States. The right is not going to put the most pressure on them, and they're not going to give them the most backlash because everybody knows that the right kind of just, you still get a bunch of Republicans that shop at, that go to Starbucks, for example. Starbucks is maybe one of the more openly left-leaning companies in the United States and far left, right? So the right's not going to be doing that. The left, however, is very vicious when it comes to putting pressure on businesses, when it comes to backlash. These companies fear the left. They absolutely do not fear the right. And I think they might actually get, we'll see, but they might actually get their way with this. And if they don't get it now, they're going to keep pushing because they just take, it's less about the big jump. It's more about the little steps that they take to get to their end goal. That's more of what it's about. And that's more of what you see here, to where, you see a little stepping stone. That's why the right rejects a lot of stepping stones, because they know where it goes. They know where it goes. And now we're talking about policing text messages. Thanks for exposing the end goal. Let's do everything we can to prevent it.
I agree. I hope it doesn't become this partisan thing where Taco Bell is for vaccine only. Shout out Taco Bell. Chick-fil-A, you must show your voter registration for Republican.
No.
I hope it doesn't turn out that way. But would I be completely surprised considering what sports organizations have done, what LeBron James does, what movie theaters or movie streaming companies do? I wouldn't be completely surprised, but I agree with you. As John Doyle says, the slippery slope is real. Any last words, James Klüg, to your new Canadian super fans?
Well, Canadian super fans. I guess one thing that I would recommend, a lot of people, they take to social media, they start talking politics, everything like that, to normalize certain conversations, to be a part of that conversation. That in the United States and in Canada is more important now than ever when it comes to expressing your views, because guess what? While you don't express your views, your opposition is working night and day to take away your rights, to take over every aspect of your life, whether it be entertainment, whether it be media, whether it be local schools, whether it be college education, anything like that. So when it comes down to it, definitely voice your opinion. Don't be afraid to. Of course, don't do it if you're going to lose your job or something like that, but do your best. Get into industries that the left has absolutely taken over and totally swarmed. In the United States, it's pretty similar to Canada when it comes to what aspects of government they control, what aspects of your life they control. Look into those things, right? It's great that we own Chick-fil-A. It's great that the right has Chick-fil-A. That is so cool. But I'd rather we own a top social media platform that respects your rights as an individual. So.
All right, thanks a lot. James Klüg on Instagram, YouTube. Catch him on Newsmax, and catch him, I guess, at a riot fighting off batons from the 1930s. Thanks a lot, James. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you soon, okay?
Andrew, thanks so much.
Thanks for watching another episode of Andrew Says. If you want exclusive content, go to rebelnewsplus.com, where we talk about topics we're not allowed to show you on social media. Danger.